Random House Audible presents Everything You Think You Know About Politics and Why You're Wrong. This is Kathleen Hall Jamieson. Preface. November 30th, 1999. The face on the screen is that of George W. Bush, Republican, Governor of Texas, son of a former president, and presidential aspirant. On the issue of U.S. trade policy, the Texas Republican says, China will find in America a confident and willing trade partner. He adds, trade freely with China, and time is on our side. Arizona Senator John McCain appears next. Same issue. I don't believe in walls, he notes. If I were president, I would negotiate a free trade agreement with almost any country willing to negotiate with us. There is, however, dissent in the ranks of the Republican contenders for president. Former Reagan administration official Gary Bauer, who opposes China's entry into the World Trade Organization, declares, my party needs to listen to Main Street, not to Wall Street on this issue. Businessman Steve Forbes agrees. No more turning a blind eye to Chinese spies in our nuclear labs, he says. No more keeping silent about Chinese slave labor camps. And what of the former Republican contender who's now seeking the spot at the head of the Reform Party ticket, Pat Buchanan? His position, too, is clear and concise. Global economy must call into existence a global government, and globalism is at war with patriotism, he intones. These 6 statements, averaging 16.5 words and 6.83 seconds each, digest the substance of the agreement between Bush and McCain and the crux of the disagreement between those two and Bauer and Forbes on the issue of China's admission to the World Trade Organization. Taken together, the statements profile with dispatch the stands of the Republican contenders. CNN's Brooks Jackson weaves the sound bites into a narrative that includes context and skillful paraphrase of related candidate beliefs. From him, we learn that Al Gore is for fast-track negotiating theory for China's entry into the World Trade Organization, and the same for Bill Bradley. Here, says Jackson, Bradley is at the signing of NAFTA. Note the efficiency of Jackson's closing sentence. So unless there's a huge upset, says Jackson, the next president of the United States will be a strong free trader, just like the incumbent. The candidates' positions are as clear here as in their first extended answers to questions about trade in the first town hall forums of the primary season. Note, for example, George W. Bush's answer, December 7, 1999, in the Arizona Town Hall, to a question from Gary Bauer asking why he had embraced the Clinton-Gore policy of giving China most favored nation status and membership in the World Trade Organization. Bush says, I appreciate that, but you know how to insult a guy by saying that I follow the policies of Clinton-Gore. I don't. They believe in what's called strategic partnership. I believe in redefining the relationship to one of competitor, but I believe competitors can find common ground. I think it's in our nation's best interest to open up Chinese markets to Arizona farm products, to Iowa farm products, to high-tech manufactured goods. It's in our best interest to sell to the Chinese. It's also in our best interest to make sure that the entrepreneurial class in China flourishes. I think we make China an enemy, they'll end up being an enemy. I think if we trade with China and trade with the entrepreneurial class and give people a breath of freedom, give them a taste of freedom, I think you'd be amazed, Gary, at how soon democracy will come. And so, I also believe China ought to be in the World Trade Organization. I also believe that Taiwan ought to be in the World Trade Organization. But let me make this clear to you and to the Chinese. I will enforce the Taiwan Relations Law if I'm the president. If the Chinese get aggressive with the Taiwanese, we'll help them defend themselves. Bauer then says, Governor, we would have never made the argument that you just made if we were talking about Nazi Germany. Is there no atrocity that you can think of? The labor camps doubling in their slave labor? A bigger crackdown? More priests disappearing in the middle of the night? Is there anything that would tell you to put trade on the back burner? Bush responds to Bauer, Gary, I agree with you that forced abortion is abhorrent, and I agree with you when leaders try to snuff out religion. But I think if we turn our back on China and isolate China, things will just get worse. Imagine if the Internet took hold in China. Imagine how freedom would spread. In my earlier answer, I said our greatest export to the world has been, is, and always will be the incredible freedom we understand in America. And that's why it's important for us to trade with China, to encourage the growth of an entrepreneurial class. It gets that taste of freedom, it gets that breath of freedom in the marketplace. Taken together, the sound bites from these two candidates and their town hall answers paint a more complete picture of their positions than either response alone. There's obvious merit in paying attention to both. But if time is of the essence, Jackson's CNN report can serve as a telegraphic substitute for the town hall exchange. The reason is simple. Whereas candidates take time to get to the point, Jackson has cut to the chase. In boiling their positions down to essentials, he has confirmed that sound bites can be substantive, that there's nothing inherently vacuous about brief candidate statements, and that his investment in finding these core statements has made it possible for us to learn in less than 3 minutes what otherwise would have taken an hour and a half. Sound bites can be superficial or substantive. Substantive sound bites are the stuff of which the best news stories are made. If that's the case, why is the brevity of candidate statements in news taken as prima facie evidence that the discourse of democracy has decayed? What accounts for the casual assumption that a soundbite is by definition superficial? My theory goes like this. Someone created a neutral word to describe the selection of a brief section of a candidate's speech for a newscast. Soundbite. Someone else, someone who had forgotten that I love you, will you marry me, it's a healthy baby girl, I will go to Korea, ask not what your country can do for you, and we have nothing to fear but fear itself, meet the definition of sound bites, appropriated the word to describe a superficial, crafted candidate statement designed to be excerpted into news. If asked to use the word in a sentence, a student might now write, "That's a good sound bite, but where's the substance?" Sound bite came to function as a synonym for superficial. Other phrases, such as negative ad or negative campaign, have been so variously defined as to be meaningless. Like a soundbite, a negative campaign is presumed to be bad for democracy. This is an instance of what rhetorical critic Kenneth Burke meant when he noted that language does our thinking for us. The thinking done by soundbite and negative campaigning leads reformers to call for longer soundbites, unmindful that length and substance are not synonyms, and for less negativity, apparently unaware that, without attack, we would lack the information needed to differentiate the candidates. I have been as guilty of this as others. Misapplied concepts are not the only problem. Listen to the pundits during a campaign, and you will hear suspect assumptions treated as dogma. They include such truisms as, attack is bad for the public. Attack drives voters from the polls. Debates are boring. There's nothing to be learned from paying attention to debates, and politicians break most of their campaign promises. If such notions are the scaffolding on which the indictment of the discourse of politics is built, the structure is shaky. It is often difficult to know whether a book is worth reading or listening to, particularly a book whose title is an unabashed provocation. How, after all, do I know what you know about politics? And even if I could read your mind, your mail, your magazines, and your ballot, by what breach of strategic sense would I want to announce to the world or to you that you are wrong? Of course, I don't know that you're personally wrong. What I do know is that many of the students in my classes, friends in the neighborhood, and reporters on the phone make assumptions about the way U.S. politics works that just don't check out against the record as I see it. You may be the exception. To save you the trouble of listening to an audiobook that tells you what you already know, I've concocted a quiz. No time limit, open book. No penalty for consulting with the political junkies in your life. Before you begin, however, a caution. Listen to the questions from the assumption that they are claims about what happens most of the time. There are exceptions. I'll note them later. Listen to the questions armed with a sense of irony. After all, the conflict I'm trying to set up between what you think you know and what the data reveal is employing a norm that I will later argue should accompany and not replace the value of consensus. In the same vein, reducing complex questions to true or false answers, and you to being wrong with the implication that I am right, is as simplistic as some of the assumptions that I am challenging. You might say that I'm using conflict, simplified narratives, and manipulative devices.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?